Last week we gave our Mini a nice basic paint job, nothing too flashy, nothing too fancy, and it's pretty basic. This week we're taking it up one more level. Hey fellow Game Masters, I'm Richard Quiner and welcome back to the Daily D20, your daily dose of all things tabletop role-playing games, helping you build your world and master your game. Of course, if you like the stuff here on the channel, I invite you to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can get notified when I upload new videos every day. Looking at our Mini from last week, we gave it a coat of primer so our new paints would stick to it. Then we gave it a base coat of paints of simple colors, nothing too flashy. We didn't worry about shading, we didn't worry about highlighting. But that's what this week is all about. We're going to get into making this Mini stand out a little bit by giving it some variation, some shades, some highlights, and how you can do that easily and quickly so you can get a lot of Minis painted as fast as possible. After you've given your Mini a base coat of all the colors you need, we're going to get in what's called shading. Now, shading is a process of basically making all the crevices or the places where the light wouldn't hit as brightly, a little bit darker so they give some variation in the colors. For example, the browns would have a more darker brown in all the crevices, or on the blue of this Mini's skin, they would have some darker blues in the crevices. There is a way to do this that is pretty simple and very straightforward, but it does require having a product called shades, and any of the miniature painting companies make these shades. They're basically a super watered down paint that is designed to not have any surface tension, so when you paint it onto a Mini, it just kind of flows into the cracks and crevices and dries there. The professional shades come in a lot of different colors, from blacks and browns to blues and reds, even yellows and pinks. So even though you could go buy different color shades for every color of your Mini, for this Mini, I don't suggest going and buying every single color of shade in existence. I suggest sticking with one simple, either a black or a brown, depending on how you want your Mini to look. In this case, for this Dragonborn, I'm going to use a black shade. Now, when you're using the shade, you do want to water it down a little bit, even though it's already very watery. You're going to apply this pretty liberally to your Mini. It's going to look a little weird at first, and you want to make sure you don't leave any puddles forming on the raised surfaces. So on this, I'm going to be looking at the armor, and if it tends to puddle up on any of the raised spots on this Mini, I'm going to try to move that around with my brush so it doesn't stay there. And I really just want it to settle in the crevices and cracks and really bring out the details of the sculpt. Once you've gone over the whole Mini with the shade, you need to just let it sit and dry for a while. The shades may take a little while longer to dry than the paints because sometimes they have some oils in them, and that takes a little longer to dry out. But once you are done, you'll see that all the details of your Mini has kind of come out in the form of the shades. All the dark crevices are much darker, and your Mini overall just looks a lot darker at this point too, but that's where highlights are going to come in. We're going to add some more contrast by giving this some simple highlights. So for highlighting, we could get into techniques and using brushes and trying to get every single line on this, but for you, the beginner, I want to teach you about dry brushing. Dry brushing is a technique where you use paint, very little paint I should say, and no water because it's dry brushing. If you have a flatter brush similar to this, you can use this to dry brush with pretty much anything. To start, you do want to have a slightly lighter color than your base coat, depending on what it is. So for this brown, I'm not going to use the same version of brown that I used originally. I'm going to use a slightly lighter version of brown. If you don't have different tints of the same color, you can always add a little white to lighten it up a little bit, and that could be used for your dry brushing. Once you have your color, you're going to dip your brush in it just a little bit. See how I'm barely getting any paint on this brush to begin with, because then I'm going to go to my paper towel and wipe it off. Not going to just wipe it off, but I'm going to brush over the paper towel until it looks like I don't have much of any paint left on the brush. So when I run my brush along the paper towel just lightly, very little of the pigment actually comes off. This means I'm ready to dry brush. Then I'm going to very lightly and very quickly run my brush over the Mini, trying to mainly just hit the raised spots on the Mini. So in this part with the armor, I will be running it back and forth until something starts to show up. If I didn't leave enough paint on my brush, this will take a long time and I won't see it very much. And if I've left too much paint on my brush, then I just won't get the highlights that I'm looking for. So it's hard to find that middle ground, but once you get the hang of it, you can figure out how much paint you actually need on your brush just to start bringing out the highlights of the raised edges of your Mini. Do this over the whole Mini obviously changing colors depending on what color you're highlighting. So on this particular mini, it will mainly be brown for the armor and the body, and then blue for the actual torso and skin of this Dragonborn, but a lighter blue than what I have on his face already. With that, you've basically taken your mini up a notch. If you look at it, you can see there is a much more of a contrasty look between the lights and the darks. It looks much more intentional, like you sat there and took the time to highlight all the raised areas, when we all know now, really, that it's just a quick, simple dry brush technique that does it pretty good. There are tons of other techniques and steps you can learn in painting minis that can really take your minis from a simple, basic kind of painting all the way up to the more professionals. Techniques such as layering the different paints, edge highlighting, wet blending, using a wet palette is another one. There's using metallic metal paints, there's using a non-metallic metal painting technique, which I don't even know how to do that very well myself. But once you've been bitten by the bug of painting minis, you'll find there's a lot out there for you to learn and a lot of room for you to progress and grow painting minis. And of course, all of this can tie into your tabletop role-playing game sessions by giving you some nice minis that are really immersive and fun for your adventure party to play with. And with that, fellow Game Masters, I've been Richard Quiner. Thank you for watching.